meeting, and we will be posting that recording online so people will have access to it.
Turn on Do Not Disturb.
Thanks, everybody. All right. So without any ado, I'm going to get started. So we have a quick agenda here. Really briefly, we're going to talk about background and need for this program, although I'm sure that many of you are well familiar. A little bit of program context and where in this sort of, where this round of ERAP is coming in for the Chicago Department of Housing. Scope of services that we're looking for, some key competencies we're looking for from respondents, and then some sort of details around timing, funding, submission requirements, and the evaluation criteria, and then we'll move on to questions. And once again, for those of you coming in, as you can see folks are doing in the chat, please put in your name, your organization, and an email, just so we have a sort of attendance roll of everybody who is attending today. So can I go through this? So, first, I don't want to belabor this point because I think all of you are familiar with this, but the reason this program is coming on the heels of an absolutely brutal year for everyone, but in particular, the last year has been an extremely difficult time for housing stability, housing service providers, tenants, landlords. This is just one chart. I could have picked any number of things here, but this is a chart that was created by the Lawyers Committee for Better Housing at the end of last year, predicting how many eviction filings essentially were waiting sort of in the wings if the eviction moratoria at the state and federal level were lifted. At that point, they were looking at potentially 21,000 folks who were unable to pay rent because of lost income due to COVID-19, either directly because they lost their job or had their hours reduced, or because they were sick, or because they needed to take care of a family member or loved one, or because they preemptively, they knew that they had a pre-existing condition that made them particularly vulnerable and decided to protect their health and stop working. But we also know that this is reflected in any number of other situations, people doubling up on the owner side, especially for smaller owners. If their tenants have been unable to pay rent, they have also obviously taken a huge hit to their income. And there are, knock-on destabilizing effects for their ability to pay their mortgage. Ultimately, if they can't do that, then destabilizing effects throughout their neighborhood, their community, especially because we know that these impacts have been very disproportionately felt in lower income and working class communities and communities of color. So all of that to say, this program is incredibly crucial. The problem with the system is that people have not been earning money, right? And so this program is stepping into the breach to fill some of those gaps and preserve housing stability for tenants, preserve stability for owners who have been losing income. And we're very happy that we are able to provide this program for Chicagoans. So I want to give just a little bit of context of where CDOH has been in the last year. So we've actually already held 2 rounds of rental assistance. The first one we actually started just a few weeks after the lockdown began in March of 2020. We used local city funds. We took $2 million of DOH funds, gave out 2,000 grants of $1,000 directly to tenants and homeowners. And we did so through a combination of an online application as well as partnerships with delegate agencies, community-based organizations who were able to reach out to their networks and bring in applicants and process applications as well. The second round began in August and was funded by about $21 million in federal coronavirus relief funds. In that time, we created grants of between $2,000 and $3,000. So we were attempting to pay roughly 2 months of rent for our applicants. And we were able to give out nearly 10,000 grants. That round was direct to tenants. And once again, utilized an online application as well as a separate track of a number of delegate agencies, community-based organizations who brought in applicants and did some application processing on their own. This program has some major differences for those of you who are familiar with either of the previous programs or other programs that might have existed in other jurisdictions. Just want to highlight a few of these major differences. So one is just the scale of it. We have $80 million that has been provided by the federal government, specifically within ERAP, which is obviously 4 times what we had in the last round, which was itself 10 times what we had in the first round. Another thing that I do want to highlight here, because it's been a challenge for us, and I know for folks who have been working on this program around the country, is that to a great extent, less now than even a few weeks ago, but still to some extent, federal guidance is still forthcoming on this program. This is a brand new program. One round of guidance was issued by the Treasury Department, which is the department that is administering the program, in January, just before the transition of administrations at the White House. The new administration, the Biden administration, has issued 2 rounds of new guidance, much of which is some significant departures and changes from the guidance that was issued by the Trump administration earlier in January. And while most sort of major questions have been resolved, there are still a few areas where we are still looking for some guidance from the federal government about exactly how to interpret some provisions. And the Department of Housing is in regular conversations with other jurisdictions all over the country, as well as we have had a few meetings directly with the Department of Treasury to follow up about these questions and share information. But I do just want to flag that this is unusual in that, not every loose end has been tied up about the ways that this program can be administered. Another major change for us at Chicago Department of Housing is that both landlords and tenants will be able to apply to this round, which I think is a really positive thing. As I said, a lot of landlords are also hurting as a result of COVID-19. So both parties will be able to initiate an application. The grants must go to the landlord unless they decline. So in both cases, if a tenant applies, we will need to, or the case management will need to contact the landlord. If the landlord applies, case management will need to contact the tenant. And unless the landlord declines to participate or does not respond, the grants will go directly to the landlord. The grants can pay for up to 12 months of unpaid back rent, as well as up to 3 months of forward-looking rent. And I'll get into this, but the city of Chicago does plan on taking full advantage of the sort of bounds set out by the federal statute. And then in addition, grants can cover utilities and relocation costs. So the city does intend to, again, take advantage of this to provide assistance for utilities, since that's a major part of maintaining housing stability. The relocation cost question is one of those areas where there is just not a lot of information about what that means. I personally asked a representative from the Treasury Department last week about that, and they said, yes, they are working on it. So we are looking for more information about that. I think we are interested in making that an option, but at the moment, it's really not quite clear what that looks like. In terms of eligibility, the federal government has laid out some pretty clear levels of eligibility. Applicants on the tenant side need to be below 80% of area median income, which as the example for a family of 4 is just under $73,000. But they also require that there is a preference for those under 50% of AMI. Exactly what that means, again, is not really delineated. Our experience, certainly in our past 2 rounds, is that the overwhelming majority of applicants were under 50% of AMI. So that's probably not a major sort of swerve to our applicant pool, but that is a requirement. The tenant also has to demonstrate a COVID-19 hardship. That is broadly construed by guidance. So again, that can be a loss of job, loss of hours, lost income because somebody had to take away from work because they were sick, because they had to care for someone, or even because they have an underlying condition or they are vulnerable to COVID-19 and they chose to not go to their essential job or their public-facing job in order to protect themselves. That is a covered COVID-19 hardship. And then obviously tenant applicants have to be a City of Chicago resident. In terms of program design, this is really modeled after how we ran the last round of our program. We are planning for about 75% of our applications that we fund to come directly through an online platform. And we are issuing an RFP, which is in fact this meeting, to identify staffing services to provide call center and application processing case management services for those applications coming directly through the online platform. We are, once again, as in the previous rounds, expecting some partner agencies, community-based organizations to bring in about 25% of the applications that we fund. They will also be using the online platform. We are expecting some of them to process their own applications. Others may simply be helping people fill out the applications, and then those applications will also move to the case management staffing agency. Payment will be done directly by the city. And we will need to do for every approved application a duplication of benefits check with the state. I'll go into slightly more detail later on, but this is a program that has directed funds to a number of jurisdictions, including overlapping jurisdictions. So one of the complications here is that we will be running this program concurrently with the state of Illinois, and applicants will be able to go to both of those places to apply. But obviously only one of us can actually provide them with a grant for a given period of time. So the state of Illinois is setting up a system to do duplication of benefits check with all of the overlapping jurisdictions. And in fact, here is the promised slide on that. There is actually a site that we have set up in conjunction with the county and with the state. IDA is the Illinois Housing Development Authority that's managing the ERAP program for the state. This is a screenshot from one piece of it. There's a table that sort of compares programs at a glance. But if you want more information about the other jurisdictions programs or how they're working together, chicago.gov/renthelp will direct you to that shared site between the state, the county, and the city. Okay, so that's some background and sort of program design. Now we'll talk about really what we're looking for through this RFP. In general, we are looking for case management and application processing for approximately 75% of the city's ERAP allocation, which just, prorating what the funding that we have is just about 54 million. We do not know, importantly, exactly what our average award is going to be. I can say that we have heard from some other entities, comparable entities around that have recently opened that they've seen average grant amounts in the sort of high 4 digits. So that's a sort of guess, but obviously every location is different, every city is different, and so we don't know exactly, but we're roughly estimating about 7,500 applications to fund as that 75% number. So we are, what that means, the case management agency would be working with tenant and landlord applicants in multiple languages over email and telephone primarily to complete their applications on the online platform. They will also be performing document review as required by the program guidelines that DOH will provide, congruent with federal law and regulations, and solicit corrected documentation where necessary. Provide in-person assistance as required. We do know from previous experience, many people do have difficulty doing online applications, completing online applications. Often that can be resolved over the phone with a case manager, but ideally there would be at least some option for people to go in person and speak with somebody who can assist them to complete their application in person. The case management agency will also be making final determination as to the approval of applications and the final award amounts following program guidelines. I mean, that will be pretty cut and dry based on the number of months that a person is applying for and their rental amounts. They will be performing duplication of benefits check with the state of Illinois. So again, the state of Illinois is creating a platform on which overlapping jurisdictions can essentially cross-check their approved applicants to make sure that the state has not already funded them, and vice versa. And then finally, providing regular reporting on activities to DOH, and obviously we'll be, working closely with the agency and doing troubleshooting as a new program and a much larger rental assistance program than we've had before. We obviously expect there to be things that we want to sort of adjust and respond to as the program is administered. A few vendor competencies just to highlight. I mean, obviously the RFP document goes into more detail on all of these things, but a few things that we do want to highlight. One of them is service to tenants and landlords with a wide variety of backgrounds. Chicago is a big city with many different kinds of communities and people and experiences in terms of, language, in terms of facility with applications like this one, in terms of comfort level with, government programs at all, and all manner of other, challenges and life experiences. And we are, very much, it is within our values as a department that we want to be able to serve all of those people and sort of proactively think about what it takes to serve the people who need this assistance the most. Obviously, in addition to that, just having administrative experience with large and complex public programs, compliance, making sure that we are doing everything by the book, that we are crossing our T's and dotting our I's. This is a large and complex program, and understanding and feeling comfortable with administering it is obviously an important piece for any respondent to have. And then also just close engagement with DOH and the ability to be responsive and proactive in communicating when there are issues that come up, being consistent in reporting. We obviously ourselves, have a very strong interest in being able to track the progress of this program closely. But we are also accountable at DOH to others within the city administration. We are accountable to the city council. We're accountable to the people of Chicago. And of course, we're accountable to the federal government. And we need to be able to be responsive to their questions and their priorities as well. And that all of that necessitates a really close working relationship and really good communication with the vendor. As far as contract timeline, so the contract will be operational from the date of the award through the end of the year. We do have an option to extend for up to 1 year. When we were first getting this off the ground, that was before the federal government passed a sort of follow-up expansion of ERAP, which did a couple major things. One of them is it just dumped a whole bunch more money that we will eventually be getting. But another is that it extended the end date of this program from December 31st, 2021 until September 30th, 2022. Obviously, we may very well run out of money before the end of the year. So functionally, this first tranche of money may very well be exhausted before the old deadline. But it does theoretically go beyond that. And then, of course, the second tranche of money, may indeed go into 2022. The other thing I'll note that the new round of funding did not change is the a sort of interim deadline of spending 65% of the allocated funds by September 30th, 2021. And to the extent that 65% of funds are not allocated by that time, Treasury has the ability to sweep funds and reallocate to other jurisdictions that have met that benchmark. So, in addition to the general urgency that we feel because people are in desperate need of this assistance, we also obviously are very, very committed to not putting ourselves or the city of Chicago in the position where Treasury has the option to sweep any of this money. With that in mind, our goal is to open applications by early May. So that is what we will be working towards. As far as funding, so we have special authorization from the City Council to do this RFP. This is not, for those of you who have participated in a city RFP previously, you'll notice there's a number of things that are different about this than that process. We're not going through the Department of Procurement Services. Council has authorized us to do this RFP as a standalone, as a department. And it is allocated up to $6 million for us to spend on this. So that is our legal cap. That doesn't mean that we are looking to spend exactly $6 million, but that is the legal cap that we have. As far as submissions requirements, and again, obviously this is all in the RFP document and in a little bit more detail. But some of these components include the applicant's experience conducting case management and application processing, especially related to programs for low-income individuals, key team members who would be participating and managing, general experience and qualifications, alignment with Department of Housing values, major clients and especially public sector clients, the applicant's view, approach to a productive case management process, any community-specific expertise or experience that the applicant has, and then finally the plan for meeting the city's minority business enterprise and women-owned business enterprise requirements, which do apply to this RFP. And I'll spend a little bit more time talking about that as well. So this is a necessary part of any RFP submission. So bidders must describe a plan for minority and women-owned business participation and commitment to achieving meaningful technical and financial goals. The current minority-owned business participation goal is 30% of contract value, and the current women-owned business participation goal is 10% of contract value. And proposed minority and women-owned business participation on a respondent's team must include well-defined management roles and responsibilities for the minority or female team members, and must allocate to the minority or women-owned businesses financial risk commensurate with the financial rewards available to be achieved by a successful respondent. The evaluation table, this is just a screenshot from the RFP, but we are doing a point system of up to 100 points. Demonstrated alignment with DOH guiding values is 10, The ability to perform the duties for tenant and landlord applicants from all neighborhoods of the city is 20. Comprehensiveness and adequacy of the proposal to process applications is also 20. Experience, qualifications, and diversity of the team is 15. The entity's overall qualifications and experience in project management and ability to complete the scope of work is 15. And stated management plan to provide updates and reporting is 10, and MBE, WBE compliance is an additional 10. And with that, thank you for listening to me speak for 30 minutes. With that, I will go to the chat and look for the questions. I'm going to try to scroll up to the beginning and go down from there. I will also ask, I know there's just a couple people who joined us after we started. If you haven't already, please put your name, your organization, and your email address in the chat. It's sort of our sign-in sheet for the day. Okay, so I'm gonna go through and look for the questions. So I have a question. What technology solution are you using to collect and organize the personal data? So we have, in fact, just today, council finalized authorization for a contract with an entity called Uncork that will be providing the application processing and intake platform for this program. And so the respondent, the selected respondent case management service would have access to essentially the back end of that program to complete application processing, document review, and everything within that system. The next question, how many grantees do you expect to support and the average size of the grant? So again, we don't know the average size of the grant. In the previous round, the average size was about 2,400, I believe, but we also capped the grants at 3,000. So obviously that's a pretty artificial number. At this point, we can pay people up to 15 months total, 12 back and 3 looking forward. You know, we know that the median rent in Chicago is somewhere around $1,100. You know, what we really don't know is how many months of assistance the typical person is going to be asking for. But I think we anticipate it's going to be in the mid to high 4 digits of the average grant size. And so we are sort of ballpark estimating 10,000 total grants provided by the program. Next question, in support of price offering, what level of budget detail is necessary? So some of this, a very detailed answer I can try to get from our contracting staff. Just, I didn't say this at the beginning. We will be collecting these questions and posting written answers to all of them on the site, and we'll be sending them to you. So the written answer will contain more information. What I can tell you is this federal grant does not allow for indirect cost allocation. So there cannot be any indirect cost through any contract that is supported through this grant program. And I know that that's come up in some of our other related work on this. Next question, will there be a separate RFP for partner agencies handling the other 25% of grants? So no, there will not be a separate RFP. Because we now, through 2 previous rounds, have been working with a number of community-based organizations on that side. We are continuing to work with many of them, and we have authority to do some non-competitive contracting with a small number of others based on gaps we've identified in our sort of on the ground outreach to particular communities. Question, when will that website go live? I am assuming that the website is being referred to as chicago.gov/renthelp. That is live right now. So if you type that into your browser right now, it'll redirect you to the shared site between the city, county, and state that provides some sort of basic information about each of those programs. Next question. Will all the questions in the chat be answered to the group after this meeting via email or posting? Yes. Yes is the answer to that question. The next one, can you share presentation recording an attendee list? We will not be sharing an attendee list, but we will share the presentation and a recording of the presentation. Question, how can nonprofits respond to MWBE? I apologize, we're not able to get the contracts person onto this call at the last minute, but I will make sure that obviously we have a full response to all of these questions in the written response that we send out very shortly.
Daniel, this is Cindy from the Department of Housing. Hi, everyone. Is it fair to say that nonprofits should still move forward and then just answer that question in the best possible way? We don't want to exclude them, right, from still pursuing to submit an application.
Yes, 1,000%. Thank you,
Okay.
Cindy. Yes, 1,000%. And I will also make sure that we're thoroughly answering that question as quickly as we can. And apologies that I can't do it right now. Just scrolling down through some additional names. Does the consultant assist with public relations and marketing? That is not a component that we are specifically asking for. What we're really focusing on is the case management of it. So making sure that applications get completed completely and correctly, going back and doing troubleshooting, soliciting correct documentation if incorrect documentation has been submitted. Obviously, one of the complex pieces of this is the fact that two parties in most cases will need to validate the application. So being the connector between those two and making sure that that's getting completed. Those are the primary responsibilities of the consultant. The next question, RFP states provide a copy of its audited financial statements for the last 3 years. Do you want 3 years of audited financial statements for the subcontractors as well as the prime? I don't believe we need them for the subcontractors. Again, we will provide written answers, so I will triple check that, but I believe we only need the audited financial statements for the prime contractor. Oh, and I see someone said they tried the website and it didn't work. Let me quickly. It just worked for me, so I'm not sure. Again, chicago.gov/rent-help should work. Do you have an idea of how soon the program might begin? How many agencies might be selected? Approximate number of clients? So those are good questions. So how soon the program may begin? Obviously, we want to begin as soon as possible. I think realistically, we're targeting the beginning of May is the goal. In terms of the number of clients expected to serve weekly, I don't have an answer off the top of my head. I will provide an answer to that in the written response.
And sorry, this question was for me, Alexandria Cummings. If I could sorry, I can't. If I could just be more specific. So one of the grants that we're working on now is with the Cook County suburban emergency rental assistance, and for that one, they ask for a number of referrals and applications that we can take per day and per week. So that's why I was asking, or if you just have a general number of how many clients each organization is expected to serve, just ballpark would be helpful as we think about our current capacity with the other rental assistance programs we're already working on.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. That definitely sounds like a useful data point to have. So I'll make sure that that's we put that in the written response, which again we'll send out as quickly as we can after this call. Okay, so just continuing to go through questions. Is Uncork the front-end application agents will use to store and track client information? Yes. So the applicants will apply through that platform. And then the case management case managers will be able to use that to manage and move the applications through either to approval or not approval, or flagging for additional case management. Is there a list of communities in need? So that's actually a great question. So obviously this is a program that is going to be needed in every corner of the city. Having run two rental assistance programs, we know that we are going to get applicants from every neighborhood in Chicago. We also know that they are going to be very disproportionately from certain places, particularly, we know that lower income communities, communities of color, immigrant communities have been particularly hard hit by COVID, both by the health crisis directly as well as the economic crisis that's followed. We are looking at, so the Chicago Department of Public Health has created a COVID-19 vulnerability index. We are looking at ways that we can use that to help target the assistance even more closely to the places that have been hardest impacted. But so I think that sort of holding both of those things in mind, that on the one hand, this is something that is going to be needed and that help is going to be provided in every corner of the city. At the same time, obviously, it's not evenly needed across the city, and we're very cognizant of that. All right, so on the website. So I will go back to the folks who are working on that website and let them know that people are having problems with it. Follow up on no indirect cost being allowed. Are you implying that vendors won't be allowed to apply their DCAA approved indirect rates to the labor component of our bid? That's something that I'm going to have to get and have to answer in writing. Do previous grantees have to reapply? So I assume that means previous tenant grantees. Yes, you will have to reapply. You are eligible, importantly, you are eligible to reapply. We obviously cannot provide funds to cover months that we have already covered. So, if, for example, you were funded in our second round last summer or fall, that was intended to cover about 2 months. I think we would basically say, okay, we could pay you up to 12 months of back rent, but because you were awarded a grant in the last round, we'll now make that 10 months essentially. So whatever you've been awarded previously will essentially just be subtracted off of your maximum award. And that goes for our programs as well as the state obviously also ran a rental assistance program last year. So that goes for both of those. But people are still eligible to apply for what hasn't been covered by other programs, but they do need to reapply within this program. With the first grants, what was the time frame to get applications approved? Were clients notified of their status, and what was the turnaround time to get payments to landlords and vendors after an app was processed? So the time frame varied widely. We opened the applications in August. Some people began getting their grants by the end of the month. Others we were continuing to fund through the end of the year. And that partly reflects administrative capacity, it partly reflects applications that were incomplete or needed additional case management, additional documentation. As far as payments to landlords and vendors. So the way that so to be clear, the way that the program worked last time and the way it will also work this time, the vendors will not be directly dispersing the grants to the grantees. They will essentially be processing and approving the applications, and then the city will make that grant. So there won't need to be a reimbursement. To be clear, there won't be any expectation that the case management or agency or any other entity other than the city will be fronting the grant amounts and then getting reimbursed. But that's an important question. Is there a specific number of awards for the staffing and case management services max budget? So yeah, again, we are anticipating allocating grant awards of roughly 75% of our total ERAP funding through the award for this RFP, which is roughly $54 million. We anticipate that is going to be approximately 7,500 grants, but again, we don't know exactly because we don't know exactly what the average award amount will be. As a department, we have been allocated up to $6 million for this RFP contract. And again, doesn't mean that we are anticipating spending necessarily all of that, but that is what council has appropriated for this. Who is responsible for training? So training will be provided on the software platform for the respondent that's chosen. What is the qualifications for a landlord? So the landlord's qualifications are much less. There's no income limits. There's none of that. Essentially, you need to show that you own the building and verify the unpaid rent. But there are no sort of income limits or COVID-19 impact requirements on the part of the landlord. And then somebody has posted Uncork's URL into the chat. Yes, I believe that is the correct URL.
Daniel, for the landlords, the landlord is going to have to provide a social security number or a EIN, correct?
Yes, thank you. That is an important note. Thank you. So the tenant applicant does not need to provide a social security number or ITIN. The landlord does need to provide an EIN or a social. Yes. So that is an important thing to note. Thank you. Will the program include situations where there isn't a lease? Yes. So if there is no lease, there's the guidance from Treasury provides a few options. One of them is to show some other evidence of regular rent payments, including bank statements or checks that essentially show a pattern of paying rent of a certain amount. If there is no documentation of that sort, what the guidance says is that jurisdictions like Chicago can provide up to 3 months of rent at the HUD fair market rent level, either the metropolitan area wide FMR or the small area FMR that's done by zip code. And that's, if you're interested, you can look up, HUD posts those numbers on their website. So if there's no documentation that can be provided of either a lease or regular rent payments, then assistance can be provided, but it's significantly restricted from what can be provided if there is a lease.
Daniel, it might be helpful to note the option to pay for hotel stays, particularly the concerns that advocates have of people fleeing domestic violence or some sort of like imminent danger that might mean that they live in hotels. So that is an option, right?
Yes, thank you for that, Cindy. Yes, so that is another thing that Treasury has made clear does qualify. Obviously, we'll be looking for certain situations where that would make sense, but yes, and that's an important piece of the program. Question, does the apartment manager or management agency qualify as a landlord? I am actually not certain. I believe I have to go back and look at the guidance, but my guess is that we actually need the owner to fill that out, or at least have somebody who can fill out the necessary information on their behalf. Because again, they do have to provide, an EIN, social. They have to provide their documentation. Oh, and I see I missed a question. Are you looking for one provider or a few? I think the preference would be for one provider. We are, we'll evaluate the applications that come in, but I think the preference is for one provider. And that is, I've reached the end of the chat. If there's any other questions, please feel free to put them in. Or at this point, since we reached the end, I actually will take a risk and just say you can unmute yourself and ask. But we do have one more question on the chat, which is, how is staff time factored into a program cost? Is there a ratio of, say, $1,000 grant to tenant or landlord to staff time involved in each case? Can you? You're asking like hours expected per grant, essentially. Is that the question? We can provide okay, yeah, and cost for that case. So we can provide some numbers on that. Again, this is a new program and we don't know exactly how it's going to go, but we do have some basis for making some educated guesses based on our previous rounds and the experience of other folks who are launching a little before we are. So we can provide an answer to that in the written answers. We provide a listing of community partners already approved. I'll have to see if we can do that yet. We're still in the process of bringing everybody on. Eventually, obviously, the answer will be yes, but I'm not sure if we can do that at this point. Will additional questions be accepted after the meeting? If so, what is the deadline? Yes, absolutely. We're going to ask that folks submit their questions by the end of the day on Monday, this coming Monday. And obviously, as questions come in, we will share answers with everybody who has downloaded the RFP so that everybody is on the same page. But yes, so and I'll make that clear again in the written response to this. But you please do submit additional questions, and we're hoping to have all those in by, again, end of day on Monday.
Daniel, one other question for you. I mean,
Sure.
just to make it clear, are collaborative applications fine? That's to say, partnership between organizations versus like a, lead sub, like a prime contractor sub-grantee type thing.
So that's a good question. Obviously, the RFP contemplates a sort of prime subcontractor relationship. Yeah. I don't believe it explicitly lays out a sort of partner model, but let me talk to our let me sort of discuss that with our contracting folks and obviously provide a written answer. So I'm actually going to type that into the chat myself so that we have that on record, and it's going to go into the written response. Okay, I'll wait a second just to see if anybody thinks of any last questions. But if not, thank you all for joining us. Thank you very, very much for your interest in this. We're really excited to partner and to move forward with this program that we know so many Chicagoans need so desperately. So we really appreciate it. Once again, I will be sending out a written response to all of the questions that have been submitted in the chat soon. In addition, please feel free to reach out to me to ask additional questions, and I will share all of those with the group as they come in and their answers. And again, please, we do ask that you get in the questions by the end of the day on this coming Monday. And with that, unless Sandy, if you wanted to, if you have anything else, I'll open that up, but otherwise we can close out.
No, thank you, everyone. We really appreciate you taking time to be with us today.
Great. All right. Thank you, everybody. And we will circulate the presentation and the recording afterwards as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.